Have you ever heard of a diary that doesn't just record ordinary events, but also contains recipes? At first glance, you might think of familiar homemade dishes. But what if those recipes had names like roasted child, boy stew, or my child dessert? Just hearing that is enough to send chills down your spine, isn't it? But this isn't a fictional horror movie. This is a real-life case that once shocked all of America. Were these just the ramblings of a delusional mind? Or did a truly deranged crime actually take place? One thing is certain, this diary holds secrets beyond imagination. What's really going on here? And what's the story behind this case? Let's find out, right now. This chilling story begins with the mysterious disappearance of a 10-year-old boy, Zachary Ramsey, also known as Zach. Zach was a cheerful, sociable child, always full of energy and laughter. His friends, teachers, and neighbors all adored him for his friendly nature and positive outlook. He lived with his family at 4004 on a quiet street and went to Whittier Elementary School every day, a place filled with fond memories for him. On winter mornings, Zach and his close friends would often gather at the school gate, playing in the freezing cold before heading into class. But that particular morning changed everything forever. On February 6, 1996, during a bitterly cold morning at around 7:30 a.m., that was when Zach disappeared. No one could have imagined that this boy's disappearance would lead to a terrifying case, one that would send shivers down the spine of anyone who heard about it. It was a bitterly cold day, as a skin-piercing chill swept through the entire city of Great Falls, and thick layers of white snow blanketed the quiet streets. Zach pulled his blue denim jacket tightly around him and wrapped his scarf snugly around his neck to fight off the winter cold. That day, he wore a denim jacket with green sleeves, a green football jersey underneath with his last name printed on the back, paired with faded jeans and his familiar high-top black sneakers. Like every other day, Zach set off down the familiar path to school. But that morning, he never showed up to class again. Along the way, he skipped down the street with the playful spirit of a typical elementary school boy. To shorten the walk to school, Zach turned into an alley, a shortcut he often used. But this time, something felt very different. Zach may not have noticed, but right there in the alley, an ivory-colored four-door sedan was quietly parked by the roadside. The engine was still softly humming, and warm exhaust fumes melted the snow behind it. Inside sat a man, watching the boy intently. In truth, Zach was a smart and cautious kid. He would usually notice if something seemed off. But that morning, it seemed he didn't realize danger was lurking so close. And just like that, Zach completely vanished on that mysterious street. At school, his friends waited and waited, but there was no sign of him. At first, everyone thought Zach might be sick or had overslept, but when the teacher called home to report the unusual absence, his mother immediately sensed something was wrong. Zach wasn't the kind of boy to skip school just for fun. Worry flooded in as she called everyone she could. Relatives, neighbors, even Zach's friends. But no one had seen him since early that morning. Panic spread quickly, and within hours, news of the 10-year-old boy's disappearance had circulated all over Great Falls. A child vanishing on the way to school threw the entire community into chaos. No one wanted to imagine the worst, but fear slowly crept into every home and every neighborhood. At that time, Montana was already facing a rise in crime. Statistics showed a serious crime occurred every 6.5 hours, but no one suspected that a terrifying presence was lurking right inside their seemingly peaceful community. As soon as the news about Zach broke, a massive search effort was launched immediately. Police, rescue teams, and hundreds of volunteers spread out in all directions, scouring every street and alley in hopes of finding Zach before it was too late. But was the boy still alive? And if not, what had really happened to Zach? During the investigation, police eventually found two crucial items: a pair of blue jeans and a blue denim jacket. That was exactly what Zach had been wearing on the morning he went missing. What was chilling was that the items weren't found together. The denim jacket had been discarded in an open field, while the jeans were found in a trash bin near the alley where Zach was last seen. Witnesses in the neighborhood confirmed seeing Zach on his way to school that morning. But as police gathered more statements, the details grew more alarming. One person remembered seeing the boy standing in the alley, as if he were waiting for someone. A nearby family reported seeing a light-colored four-door car slowly moving through the alley. Most terrifying of all, the car had once driven directly toward Zach before coming to a sudden stop. Another witness who lived at the end of the alley gave an even more disturbing account. He saw Zach crying, standing next to a large man whose face looked furious. Around 7:45 a.m., a key testimony emerged. A man recalled seeing an older man in a navy blue police jacket standing quietly beside a trash bin, behaving strangely. Moments later, Zach entered the alley, while the man remained there watching. The man's identity slowly came to light: Nathaniel Jonah, but he wasn't a stranger. On the contrary, his criminal record was filled with chilling details. So who exactly was Nathaniel Jonah, and just how terrifying was he? Let's continue unraveling this case together. Nathaniel Jonah, born David Paul Brown, was born on February 15, 1957, in Worcester, Massachusetts. His life was far from ordinary from the start. At just 3 weeks old, he was diagnosed with hydrocephalus, a condition where excess cerebrospinal fluid builds up and puts pressure on the brain. Although he survived the life-threatening condition, early neurological damage may have deeply affected his behavior and cognition. When he was 3, his family moved to Lantana, Florida. It was there that the disturbing signs in his personality began to surface more clearly. His father, Philip Brown, was a mechanic who specialized in repairing heavy equipment. A strict yet helpless man, he couldn't control his son's increasingly bizarre behavior. He didn't just steal from friends and relatives, he also had strange obsessions that deeply disturbed his entire family. At first, his father believed he suffered from kleptomania, a disorder that causes an uncontrollable urge to steal. But in truth, that was only the tip of the iceberg. Because he wasn't just a troubled child, he was slowly turning into a real monster. From a young age, he endured a childhood filled with abuse. His father, Philip Brown, feared his son wouldn't grow up to meet the masculine standards he expected. So he often used a leather belt to teach him with harsh beatings. Under the weight of physical and emotional abuse, or perhaps due to his own neurological disorders, his bizarre behavior began to surface. He developed horrifying, self-harming tendencies, repeatedly scratching his skin until it bled, then biting the wounds, even swallowing his own blood. This behavior terrified his teachers and classmates. The school called his mother numerous times, but instead of intervening, she remained indifferent to her son's condition. In 1964, just months after his family moved back to Worcester, Massachusetts, he shocked the entire neighborhood when he nearly killed a young girl. He lured her into the basement with the promise of showing her a Ouija board he had received as a gift. But as soon as the girl stepped down the stairs, Nathaniel suddenly attacked her, using the Ouija board to strangle her. Fortunately, her screams brought his mother running just in time to stop a tragedy. However, the horrifying incident was never reported to the police. The victim's family chose to remain silent, and the matter was quickly forgotten. But for Nathaniel, something had changed forever. In 1973, his disturbing behavior escalated. He crafted an anonymous letter by cutting letters from a magazine, trying to lure 2 boys in Webster to a cemetery with the promise of $20 and a special surprise. Luckily, the boys refused, sensing that something was off. When the boy's mother found out, she considered reporting him, but ultimately chose not to press charges, believing he was just a troubled young man who needed treatment, not punishment. Sadly, that decision turned out to be a grave mistake. From that point on, every time he put on his fake police jacket, a child was at risk of falling into his hands. In March 1975, having just turned 18, he had nearly dropped out of school and had no direction in life, other than fulfilling his dark desires. One morning, he spotted a boy named Richard O'Connor on his way to school. He immediately approached the boy, pretending to be a police officer, and carried out a broad daylight abduction. But this time, luck wasn't on his side. A neighbor witnessed the entire incident and quickly called the police. Within minutes, patrol officers had located his vehicle. When they opened the door, the sight was horrifying. Richard O'Connor was covered in blood, barely breathing, and so terrified he had urinated and defecated on himself. He was arrested on the spot. But what angered people most was that the legal system didn't sentence him to prison. Instead, he was given a suspended sentence on the grounds of mental illness. Though he avoided jail, his level of danger led to him being sent to Bridgewater State Hospital, a facility for the treatment of sexually dangerous offenders. There, he was held indefinitely, because no one could say when, if ever, someone like him would be safe for society. While institutionalized, he spoke openly in chilling conversations about his depraved fantasies involving children, the twisted urges he would act on if given the chance. On March 22, 1984, still under institutional care, he made a bizarre decision. He legally changed his name from David Paul Brown to Nathaniel Benjamin Levi Bar Jonah. The reason behind the name change remains a mystery. When asked, he gave different explanations, once saying he wanted to experience discrimination as a Jew, another time claiming he was actually Jewish and wanted his name to reflect that. But in truth, he had no Jewish heritage at all. His family was of Scandinavian descent, and the new name was nothing more than a persona he invented. Though he now had a new identity, Nathaniel Bar Jonah's true nature remained unchanged. He was merely waiting for another opportunity to fulfill his wicked desires, and tragically, the justice system couldn't stop him forever. In 1984, Nathaniel was granted a parole hearing. Two psychologists hired by the defense testified that he was no longer a threat to society. The state of Massachusetts failed to present enough counter-evidence, resulting in his victory at the hearing. While some psychologists defended Nathaniel, many other experts still believed he hadn't abandoned his violent thoughts. A doctor at Bridgewater even revealed that Nathaniel once confessed, "My greatest pleasure comes from violent fantasies." Despite all warnings, on February 12, 1991, Supreme Court Judge Walter Steele ordered his release. However, due to administrative delays, it didn't happen until July of that year. Just a month after his release, Nathaniel quickly proved that his nature had not changed. On August 9, 1991, outside a post office in Oxford, Massachusetts, he spotted a young boy sitting alone in a car while his mother was mailing a letter. Seeing an opportunity, Nathaniel jumped into the vehicle and used his 300-pound frame to pin the child down. Fortunately, the boy's mother returned just in time and rushed to save her son. Panicked, he fled immediately. The incident proved that he had never stopped seeking out new victims. Nathaniel was quickly identified and arrested by police. During questioning, he admitted to intending to kill, but only pled guilty to assault charges. The Worcester County prosecutor proposed a 2-year probation sentence and requested that Nathaniel relocate to Great Falls, Montana, where his mother lived. Strangely, instead of seeking incarceration, Massachusetts authorities simply chose to push him elsewhere, as a temporary solution. In the following years, Nathaniel kept a low profile, staying out of law enforcement's spotlight. However, when the disappearance of Zachary Ramsey occurred, Detective Bill Belushi was assigned to the case. At first, he checked the list of registered sex offenders in the area, but Nathaniel's name wasn't there. Still, several witnesses reported seeing Nathaniel in the alley near where Zach vanished. Recognizing the importance of this lead, Bellucci began focusing on Nathaniel. He made multiple requests for a search warrant of Nathaniel's residence, but was repeatedly denied. During this period, Nathaniel had moved out of his mother's house and lived alone for the next 3 years. The investigation between Bellucci and Nathaniel turned into a tense game of cat and mouse. With his long criminal history, Nathaniel knew how to exploit legal loopholes to evade charges. However, Bellucci didn't just follow standard procedures. He viewed Nathaniel as a special case. Though never convicted of murder, Nathaniel had come dangerously close to killing multiple times. On December 13, 1999, while under surveillance, Bellucci noticed Nathaniel repeatedly showing up near an elementary school, exhibiting suspicious behavior. Within a single week, he went there 3 times. This led Bellucci to believe he was preparing to strike again. That fear was justified. Each time, Nathaniel wore a dark blue jacket, a beanie, and carried 2 cans of pepper spray, a toy gun, and a fake badge. Realizing the need to act swiftly, Bellucci decided to arrest him. He used charges of impersonating a police officer and illegal possession of weapons to take Nathaniel into custody. Just 2 days later, on December 15, 1999, a judge approved a search warrant for his residence in hopes of uncovering more evidence. The search was quickly carried out at both his mother's home and his private residence. Initially, police focused only on finding evidence related to impersonating an officer. However, they were unprepared for what they actually found. Inside his home, police discovered a range of items aiding his impersonation: 2 jackets, one with a toy badge in the pocket, a second fake badge, a stun gun, and a baseball cap labeled Security Patrol. Upon closer inspection, police uncovered a horrifying truth. In Nathaniel's kitchen, a rope dangled from the ceiling, showing clear signs of having been used for a disturbing purpose. They also found 2 albums filled with newspaper clippings of children, along with research materials on rope knots and restraint techniques. Even more troubling, among the documents was an article titled "Autoerotic Asphyxiation." When investigating Nathaniel's schedule, the police discovered that he hadn't gone to work on February 6, 1996, the very day Zachary Ramsey went missing, as well as the days leading up to it. More notably, at that time, his mother was not at home but had left town to attend a funeral with her younger brother. However, her car did not match the description provided by witnesses of the vehicle seen near the location where Zach disappeared. This raised a major question. Could Nathaniel be the one behind Zach's disappearance? Nathaniel's 1978 4-door Toyota Corolla was still parked at his house. Following these initial findings, Bellucci immediately requested a second search warrant, just 2 days after the first search. This time, among a pile of old newspapers about Zach's disappearance, the police found a list titled Lake Webster, which contained 54 names, all of them boys. Even more chilling, the list appeared to be linked to Nathaniel's earliest victims in Massachusetts, including 3 boys he had assaulted in the 1970s. But what made investigators shudder the most was the final name on the list: Zachary Ramsey. Right after the boy's name was a chilling, unfinished note: "Is dead." However, the nightmare didn't end there. As they continued searching, police uncovered around 3,500 photographs of children, along with an undeveloped roll of film. Among them was a photo of Nathaniel standing next to 3 unidentified boys. Additionally, investigators found several journals filled with strange symbols that appeared to be some form of code. All of these materials were immediately seized for decoding. During the investigation, police interviewed several individuals who had lived with Nathaniel. An old friend of his recalled seeing the exact outfit Zach had been wearing the last time he was seen before vanishing. He also mentioned overhearing someone talk about discovering a pair of blood-stained gloves. An even more disturbing detail emerged when Nathaniel's roommate was interrogated. In a panic, he accidentally mentioned Zachary Ramsey without any relevant context. Under pressure, he made a chilling statement: "Zach will never be found," because he was dismembered and discarded in different places. About a month later, the police deciphered the contents of Nathaniel's journals. Horrifyingly, the journals turned out to be a cookbook. However, the recipes had disturbingly titled dishes such as roasted child meat, boy stew, and my child dessert. These titles sent shivers down the investigators' spines as they considered their potential meanings. But that wasn't the end. Police soon uncovered an even more shocking piece of evidence: a large object with traces of blood. In Nathaniel's garage, they found a plywood board that had been scrubbed with strong chemicals, yet the surface still bore deep chop marks, suggesting it had been used as a cutting board. When investigators used luminol to check for blood traces, they discovered the letters TAA written in blood on the floor. This name was immediately connected to an old case: James TAA, a boy who was found strangled to death in Ridge, New Hampshire in 1973. Another grim detail further deepened the horror of the case. Just a few days after Zach's disappearance, Nathaniel hosted a barbecue for his neighbors and served burgers. He claimed the meat in those burgers was venison, meat he had personally hunted, butchered, and prepared. However, there was a major problem. Nathaniel had never owned a hunting rifle. He didn't have a hunting license. His credit card history revealed that he hadn't purchased any food during the entire month following Zach's disappearance. These details led investigators to a chilling question. If he didn't hunt and didn't buy food, then what exactly was the meat he served at that barbecue? During the search of Nathaniel's home, police found a meat grinder that contained what appeared to be human hair. Additionally, the plywood board in his garage bore bloodstains and deep chopping marks, indicating it had been used as a large cutting surface. All of these clues led to a horrifying theory. Could Nathaniel have fed human meat to his neighbors? Although there was no direct evidence to confirm it, Nathaniel's depraved nature, combined with the suspicious barbecue and Zach's disappearance, led many to believe he had done something even more horrific than anyone had imagined. At the same time, police began excavating an old house linked to him. There, they discovered 21 bone fragments belonging to a boy between the ages of 8 and 13. However, the plumbing in the house couldn't be examined, as it had recently been replaced due to ongoing leaks. This led to a terrifying theory. Could what happened to Zachary Ramsey have been even more dreadful than anyone had ever imagined? The biggest problem in the investigation was that the DNA from the collected hair and bones did not match Zachary Ramsey. Instead, they belonged to two different black males whose identities were never determined. These unidentified remains raised a chilling question. How many other victims have been forgotten? Nathaniel spent his life treating predation as a twisted game. But when brought before the justice system, only 3 victims were presented as evidence. The case of Zachary Ramsey was the most controversial. Perhaps that's precisely why Nathaniel was finally exposed. However, Zach's mother steadfastly refused to accept that her son had died. Was it denial fueled by overwhelming grief, or did she know something no one else did? Public opinion was never certain whether her refusal impacted the investigation or whether it was simply the result of legal advice. Whatever the reason, her refusal to believe that Nathaniel was involved in Zach's disappearance hindered the resolution of the case. Even more strangely, she claimed a psychic had convinced her that Zach was currently living in Italy. She even threatened to side with Nathaniel if he were prosecuted for murdering her son. Ultimately, due to the lack of direct evidence, all charges related to Zachary Ramsey were dropped. Prosecutors were forced to shift their investigation to other victims, and they had to act quickly. Among the names found on the list in Nathaniel's home were 2 boys who had lived in the same building as him. Both appeared in footage recovered from his house. One of them testified that Nathaniel had invited him over for a sleepover and then sexually molested him. The other boy had even visited Nathaniel in prison and written him letters, saying he considered him a friend. But perhaps the most heartbreaking fact is that Nathaniel came dangerously close to getting away with it all. He was a calculated sexual predator who repeatedly exploited legal loopholes to evade justice. Everyone knew his true nature, but the case kept getting delayed, and no one could do much about it. One of the clearest examples of the justice system's failure was the case of Mary Patron. She had been attacked by Nathaniel when she was only 6 years old, and many years later, the moment she saw him, she immediately recognized the man who had haunted her. Sadly, the statute of limitations had expired, making it impossible to bring Nathaniel to trial for that crime. Despite evading justice for many years, Nathaniel was eventually sentenced to 130 years in prison. With no chance of parole, he was held accountable for the crimes of kidnapping, aggravated assault, and the sexual abuse of multiple victims. In 2008, he was found unconscious in his prison cell after suffering a heart attack. Due to his long-standing poor health, he was pronounced dead shortly afterward. But how many dark secrets did he take with him to the grave? Nathaniel's case revealed a frightening reality: the lack of coordination in the investigative and prosecutorial process. For example, parole officers were completely unaware of his prior crimes. During trials in 1977 and 1999, not a single court had information about the crimes he had committed in Massachusetts. The justice system failed to comprehend the true level of danger Nathaniel posed, which allowed many innocent children to continue becoming his victims over several decades. Zach's mother may continue to deny the truth, but in 2011, a judge officially declared Zachary Ramsey legally deceased. But what if she's right? What if Zach is still alive somewhere? Did Zach truly become one of Nathaniel's victims? Or is there still a faint possibility that the boy is out there somewhere? That question remains unanswered. And it is this very uncertainty that has made Zachary Ramsey's case one of the most mysterious disappearances in American criminal history.